Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by SS&C Blue Prism. Agentic automation isn't just the next step in automation, it's the future of how work gets done. By enabling intelligent, autonomous agents to take action, adapt, and collaborate, organizations are unlocking new levels of productivity, growth, and customer delight. Join us as we explore how agentic automation is reshaping work for the better, for customers, employees, shareholders, and most importantly, you. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of agentic automation, subscribe now. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. I'm your host, Michael Marchuk.
And I'm Brad Hairston.
And we are so glad that you've joined us for this week's pulse check of AI and automation news, as we do every week. And this week, we've got several articles to go through, as we always do. Brad, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Excellent. Our first article is from The Sun, the UK edition. It's titled, Helping Hand. More than half of Brits would accept AI shopping assistance recommendations, new survey finds. So, as you may know, when you're shopping on your shopping cart in Amazon and it recommends different things to you, you may look at them and check them out and whatnot. But in this survey, it actually goes a little further than that because they're suggesting, at least from the survey, that people would let AI assistants just take those assumptions, those recommendations. What are you thinking about this? Tell us about the article.
Yeah, I think the survey said 28% of UK adults said that they would be fine with this for purchases below £99. But forget about the UK. I would be fine with this. I think, I've been, as I read this article, I was considering the fact that my wife and I, especially as it relates to groceries, we buy the same stuff over and over and over. And it wouldn't take AI a whole lot of effort to look at our purchase history and to learn kind of what we like, what brands we like, what prices we like, and let them go to town. I guess we got to also give them a look in our refrigerator to see what we need. maybe that side needs to be figured out. But I guess the question from this article that it raises is, are we witnessing the emergence of kind of like a trust threshold where consumers are willing to grant autonomy for low risk, repetitive decisions, but they still want human oversight for the higher value, transactions, the higher stakes decisions. It is an interesting, observation about, what people are starting to allow, where they're starting to allow autonomy to creep in. I know we have one more article at the very end of this list that really gets into an interesting space. I thought about a McKinsey recent article too, that touches on this in an indirect way, but I think it's relevant. They said that one of the big, governance challenges facing companies is in defining, which users, whether human or AI, are authorized to access resources and under what conditions. I mean, that's something that must be figured out early on, and you got to put up the right guardrails around that. If you don't, then it can get out of hand. So I found that that was McKinsey speaking about another aspect of this that's very relevant. So, but I have a question for you, Michael, on this one. If AI is making the purchase decisions, then who from the brand standpoint, who owns the relationship with the customer?
That's a very good question.
Do you think it will impact their ability to maintain, like an emotional connection with the customer if AI agents are making all the transactions?
I think there's a combination there. So first is when you start talking about that, when you give AI the ability to accept a recommendation, the assumption that I have, and again, I'm not really sure how in depth this particular survey was, But I would assume that it would be for things that may not necessarily be brand sensitive. In other words, if I'm buying peanut butter or something along those lines, I know somebody's out there going, "Oh, I don't like Jif. I want one with the chunkies in it," or whatever the issues are, right? There's always a reason why. But the reality is, like, yeah, one peanut butter is very similar to another peanut butter. It just depends on how much sugar they put into it. But for things maybe like, let's take something else like an apple. Okay, so something that's okay. It's a piece of fruit. I'm not sure exactly where this apple came from. It's from a brand that I may or may not care about. Somebody cares about it, but I don't necessarily care what brand of apple I get, as long as it's the type of apple I want. In those kind of situations where you're not brand sensitive, I could care less if you give me as long as it's a type of apple I like. That's what I'm looking for. Now, if you start going into something else where it's like, hey, we know you always buy Levi jeans, and so we're going to suggest that you have these new Wrangler jeans, and we think these will be good for you. We're just going to buy them for you. Well, I like the fit of the Levi jeans that I have now, and I'm not sure I'm going to like the fit of the other jeans when they just show up on my doorstep. So I think that could be an issue. Is like you said, where do you allow it to have that kind of authority to do purchase recommendations on your behalf, and where do you not? The other thing too is I keep thinking of like my daughter who buys all kinds of different makeups and tries different things on. Sometimes they irritate her skin, sometimes they don't.
Yeah,
she an AI won't know that until she gets that product and tries it. So those are the kind of things that I think brand sensitivity and fit finish type of things that you have preferences over that AI may not necessarily understand could be an issue. But anyway, good questions for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about another thing from the Dallas Express. I don't know if this is a paper that you get delivered to your house by the paper boy or not, but the Dallas Express has an article titled AI-Powered Hacking. Anthropic reports first largely automated cyber attack linked to China. So evidently, the Chinese government figured how these AI tools were able to do some interesting things. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened?
Yeah, first of all, kudos to Anthropic for detecting this and then making the public aware of it. But it did come from them. I mean, Anthropic reported that these attackers linked to the Chinese government, surprise, surprise, they manipulated Claude using various jailbreaking methods that tricked the AI into bypassing safety guardrails. But what's most concerning about this, I mean, this is really troubling, is how it demonstrates that AI agents in some situations can autonomously perform actions on a user's behalf. And if it's in the wrong hands, they can substantially increase the visibility of these large-scale cyber attacks. So the expansion of the attack surface as enterprises begin using more and more AI agents, could really make this problematic. So it's yet one more reason to raise the flag and say organizations need to be careful about how they deploy and leverage, third-party agentic kind of AI agents, and how those interact with their internal resources. This story is sparking or bringing the whole debate back around we need a lot more regulations, and then the other side saying no, regulations stifle innovation and stifle productivity, and so that debate continues to rage. I guess I have lots of questions these articles are raising in my head today, but the question I have is, when an agent commits a cyber attack or causes harm, who do you think is liable? Is it the model developer? Is it the system deployer? Or is it the user? What do you think?
I think all of them have. So everyone has some level of. I mean, certainly from the manufacturing standpoint, anyone who is providing this kind of solution or service has some kind of liability in my mind. But if you take maybe like automobile accidents, the manufacturers in those cases say, well, no, it's actually the user. So in cases where you have a service, though, like this, where it's clearly something that I can't do on my own, I have to have the service available to me. Where does that lie? Obviously, there's no clear-cut answer in this, but I think it's going to be tough to understand how best to protect myself against this type of things, my AI agents that are doing things on my behalf versus, what some other unknown actor who's come in to be able to troll my AI agents without my knowledge.
Yeah.
So,
well, you can't send the AI agent to jail. We know that.
We could try, but it will likely not work out well.
Determining who is the bad actor or who are the bad actors is always difficult. But yeah, it feels like someone should get punished, and it feels like people that are just negligent and they do things outside of their company policies,
right?
Using agents that cause this major cyber attack. There's got to be some consequences there. Maybe not jail, but there needs to be consequences. I think every question, though, every company should question, how many of their current automation guardrails assume that a human is going to even notice that something's wrong before all the damage happens. I mean, that's something that I take away from this is, the companies really need to think about that.
And that's what's interesting to me, because you said that, and the article mentions it, Anthropic, found this. They found this was happening. But at what time did they find this happening?
Right.
I mean, how do you say, after, they had some alerts from their internal guardrails, or after the guardrails themselves were breached and activity was already happening, that perhaps they realized, well, wait a second, this is outside the norms. So I don't know. It's difficult to protect against all these types of things, for sure.
Yeah, I think the article said that there were 30 companies that were targeted. So
they said a few got through. They didn't really go into that part of it.
What is a few, and how many? What damage?
How bad was it? Yes.
Yeah. Troubling.
Exactly.
No doubt.
Very, very much so. But these are the things we have to sort of look at now, just as we did before with normal cybersecurity and firewalls. We're evolving with all the rest of the stuff. We have to figure out how to use it best.
Yeah.
Okay. Now to BBC for another issue that we've dealt with several times, but this is a newer article that kind of takes a different turn to it. From the BBC, the AI will slash headcounts by 2/3, says a retail boss. So we've seen all kinds of articles talking about how white-collar work is now at risk and how AI is going to be taking over and we're all doomed. But this is to take a different stand on how this is looking, and maybe gives us some idea as to why organizations are moving forward with automation at the pace they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've heard from the Anthropic CEO, and we've heard from other big tech players who have kind of sounded the alarm about potential job displacement, things like that. This is the first executive outside of the tech sector, or one of the first, who's come forward and made this kind of bold claim. And his name is Nick Glenn. He's the boss of Buy It Direct, which is a website through which you can buy appliances directly in the UK. And he's gone on record saying that his workforce, he expects it will drop by 2/3 within the next 3 years. But they'll have the same revenue, the same activity. They're just going to have 2/3 less people. So this is obviously getting a lot of attention, and it's kind of a stark prediction, but there's a little bit of a double whammy here, and it's mentioned in the article, which is in the UK specifically, there's been a number of increased taxes, employer taxes that have come about that reveal that this is a kind of a perfect storm where if you can use fewer people to deliver the same work, you're going to also avoid all these additional taxes and costs that are now a reality for every company in that geography. And so it's probably not likely to decrease. It's probably likely to increase as a result of that. So, we've seen, and we've talked on this podcast about lots of other analysts and surveys that have been done that all seem to suggest that the clerical jobs, the junior kind of managerial ones, the administrative roles, they're the ones that are most likely going to decrease significantly. And so, there's you have to wonder, like, what is the role of the middle manager going forward? Because that seems to be another one in the midst. That's not a clerical role, but is that level of management going to be impacted through all the AI adoption and I don't think it's just going to be the new hires. You also have to wonder, if you take away the new hires, who's going to progress to take those more senior level roles at somewhere down the line, or are companies just going to hire experienced candidates? There's all kinds of things that I think are impacted by this trend. It's just interesting that, here a major retailer comes out and says, this is my direction going forward. And thank you, UK lawmakers. You've made it easy for me to embrace this.
Yeah, I think this is a point where I think we're having the transition of this technology, not just this technology, but many technologies that are coming together. If you think of some of the stuff that Elon Musk has been talking about, saying, hey, we're going to have billions of his little robots running around doing things, and people won't have to work, it'll be optional. And there's a lot of implications that come back to that. So there's the incentives that people have to be more efficient and allow their organization to grow, and people feel better about not doing menial type of tasks. But then there's the taxes and other disincentives they have from a corporate perspective, saying, well, if I don't have to do all these things, now I have another reason why maybe automation in a more aggressive stance makes more sense for my organization. So now you're looking at not necessarily from people are still hiring people still want to work with people. But when you make it more difficult or make it more costly, where your interactions with the government are impacted based on the number of people you're hiring in a negative way, you may start rethinking things. Listen, if I can't do it that way, I'll find a way to have no people. And that way my taxes will drop substantially, and I won't have to worry about any of this red tape that I have to be put through. So again, there's no easy answer for any of this, but there has to be some more comprehensive thinking about what kind of incentives will we have for companies, organizations to be able to hire people and train them and upskill them and allow them to thrive in this new type of economy without penalizing organizations for doing that kind of stuff. So
totally.
Again, not easy to figure out for sure, but that's how things are working. Speaking of hiring and things that are not easy to discern, we're going to move on to our next article from Fortune. This article is titled, "Trust is at an all-time low for both job seekers and recruiters. Hiring platform CEO says talent acquisition is in an AI doom loop." Now, Brad, I don't know about you, but I have several friends that have been looking for work lately, and they've said very similar things to me, that the AI filters have been very, very difficult to get through, and they assume they're AI filters only because they send out their resumes and hear nothing back, so they go into the black hole. Yet, we are seeing AI being touted as the best thing since ever to be able to filter resumes and get the right candidates. So what's going on?
Yeah. Well, this article can be summed up by one quote that it mentions, it from the CEO of this HR hiring platform called Greenhouse. He says it's easier than ever to apply for jobs, but it's harder and harder to get a job. I think that sums it up. And definitely we have friends looking for jobs, and they all say the same thing. Not only is AI filtering, is basically the first interface you have with a company, but I have friends who have gone into interviews and they realize they're being interviewed by AI. They also, they get past that, and then they're being decisioned by AI. But one of the other things that doesn't get mentioned in this article, and I don't know if you've heard from your friends about this, but there's apparently a lot of companies that use AI to create a bunch of fake jobs that they post. In some cases, so that they can justify hiring someone internally. In other cases, they just want to use it to kind of get a bunch of candidates so that when they are ready to hire, they can hire. But they're jobs that aren't real, and that is one of our close friends who's been looking for a while. She said that's the most disheartening thing, is when she goes through this process and only to find out that a job is not real. So all of these things are driving the level of trust in AI, specifically as it relates to HR and getting a job and finding a job and all those things. It's really driving it, much, much lower. This CEO, his name's Daniel Chait. He calls it the AI doom loop, where, employers are overwhelmed because they have all these applicants and they can't tell which ones to pay attention to. And then on the other side, the applicants are they're dissatisfied with the process. They're disheartened. They aren't going for the right jobs, or they're trying to manipulate their resumes to get past the filters in some way. I mean, it's really scary. And probably the most troubling thing about this is the article says that it's driving bad behavior, and they did a survey and found out that half of job seekers are actually considering how to use prompt injections to get past these AI filters, and the segments that are experiencing this the most are IT and banking and finance jobs. So that's, if we tie this back to the Anthropic story that we covered earlier, I mean, the same kind of jailbreaking techniques that are used to hack models are now being essentially kind of weaponized by job seekers. And so that's troubling, probably more than anything else about this. And I think every agentic system that companies deploy you just have to realize it's going to become a target for adversarial, manipulation. And so, you have to build the right defenses, and you need to think about all the things that could go wrong or how outside parties could take advantage of it. So yeah, I think to me, it's a great example where if we remove all human judgment from the hiring process and we let AI just go and find the candidates, interview them, select them, I think that's bad. I think there are certain exceptions to that. I think if you talk about like jobs in the gig economy, I've heard of friends of mine say they got a job with Uber and they never talked to a human, and they don't know if humans ever even knew that they came on board. It was completely AI driven. That's probably okay. I mean, you don't, in those kind of situations, you don't necessarily need, to talk to a human. And, if you have questions, I'm sure you can get them answered. But for other jobs, many other jobs, human decisioning and human interaction is so important. And so I would hate it if, we tend to like just cast all of these hiring processes and what have you into the AI bucket and say, yeah, we're not going to mess with that anymore. I don't think that would be a good thing.
Well, what's interesting to me, this is where it gets down to what are we really trying to do here? Going back to the actual process itself. These are actual people
Mhm.
looking for a role to support in your organization. And while I imagine that the recruiters inside the company are looking to help streamline their own job processes, the reality is that if people aren't engaged in the process of hiring other people, you have to wonder about the companies themselves and how
Mhm.
they are expecting to move forward. Because regardless of the volume of resumes that may come in, if you simply let AI or it's like if I hired somebody specifically just to go and look at resumes to discount them,
Mhm.
they're going to get really good at discounting resumes. Oh, we're not going to take this one. We're not going to take this one. And they'll sort them through till they get none.
Yeah.
So even if it's a person, if you're rewarded for, reducing the number of resumes that come through.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I really am concerned that perhaps in a field where this is extremely important, so what people do and their livelihoods for their families and whatnot,
Yeah.
to be impacted by, again, a technology that theoretically should be supporting, this process is actually hindering it. So anyway, we should see how this goes here, but I hate to say it, but I can't blame people for doing prompt injection. If they're going to get AI to yank their resumes, you might as well, use it against them to to try to get in the door. So our last one, talking about getting in the door. I am sure there's been plenty of times where you're out having a barbecue in the backyard, enjoying time with the family, little dog Sadie running around, having fun in the sun, and a swarm of mosquitoes comes and just irritates you, right? And then, that's one thing to be irritated, but also, hey, mosquitoes, they breed diseases too. Well, I have an article that'll be just up your alley for that. So this is from Aeronaut Media. Introduced miniature drone Tornall, was introduced to destroy mosquitoes with propellers. Now, this sounds like they've created a very interesting application for AI, and in a way that may be kind of interesting for us to evaluate. Tell us a little bit more about what these drones do.
No doubt, this was my favorite article of the 5 that we're covering today. It's fascinating to me. I loved it. And yes, we have our fair share of mosquitoes down here in Texas, in a warm weather state. So I would be all for this, by the way. Let me just start right there. If I could buy a drone that I could let loose in my backyard and it could wipe out all the mosquitoes, that would be amazing. Whether that's ever going to be allowed in my state, in my country, in the world in general, we'll have to find out. This is a startup. We have to acknowledge that right away, based in France, that just started this year. So this is a provocative, interesting article. This company, they have just launched, and they've got this bold idea to focus autonomous drone technology in the pest control industry. And what's being said about them is amazing. They can take their little 40-gram drones and they can patrol areas, and they eliminate them by using echolocation and then phased microphone arrays to hone in on the mosquitoes, and then they can sufficiently, using a chemical that they release, they can clear like a 1 square kilometer area, which my metrics are US based, so I can't decide if that's a big area or not. I'm assuming it is.
It's big enough, unless you got a really big yard. I mean, maybe your estate is that large where you don't have to worry about that. But
yeah, now this, of course, is, anyone that reads this article is going to smile. Then they're going to say, ooh, but is this a slippery slope? Is it a blueprint for a future kind of automation where systems can decide, they can act in the physical world without any human intervention, including with weapons? Now, this is a pretty small weapon, and we're talking mosquitoes. We're not talking people. We're not talking anything about that. But it does raise a lot of ethical questions, and also, I mean, the obvious questions are: what if it goes awry? What if it sprays my dog and my dog gets sick and dies? I mean, that would be a horrible consequence of this. I don't think they're talking about anything that's going to deploy a chemical that could impact a large animal or a human. But I think it is a very fascinating potential example of how AI could make our community and our physical space better and safer. Michael, I thought about the fact that here in Texas, every year we have a migration of the African killer bees. Mm-hmm. And you'll hear about it on the news. They'll say, hey, the African killer bees are back. If you get stung by one, you need to immediately go into the hospital and whatever. And then they show the local authorities driving through neighborhoods, spraying this huge mass of insecticide all throughout. Just literally hitting areas. So isn't these little drones that hone in on where the actual mosquitoes are, wouldn't that be a better way to take care of the African killer bees?
It sounds
which are scary, and we need to address them and take care of them. So it's a real threat. And if we can do it in a safer, more contained way using AI, I'm all for it.
Well, just to clarify, these drones that are made by this firm actually kill the mosquitoes using their propellers. So there is no chemical.
Oh, okay, I missed that. I must have read the article too quickly.
Yeah, they actually kill them with their propellers. So there is no chemical, and they are able then to clear an area by honing in on the unique.
I love it.
Yes.
So even better. We don't need FDA approval. We don't need
exactly.
They'll find a way to slow it down. Oh, but what if the propellers take out a beautiful butterfly? And
it's always a possibility.
Now we've killed all the butterflies in the world. I mean, there are still things that have to be figured out. But if we can solve the mosquito problem, the African killer bee problem, I mean, there's a lot of things that we just need to get rid of. And I guess that raises another question about what if people like mosquitoes, or they like killer bees, or they like rats, and we wouldn't want to take out whatever it is. There's always going to be, a counter side to each of those opinions. But anyway, it's a fun article, and
it's a good article.
Even though I misread it, I found it.
And for everyone out there who may want to actually read it themselves, I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can actually maybe read it a little more carefully than Brad did. So anyway, that's all we got for this week's Pulse Check. Join us next week on our Pulse Check, and in between that, we of course have a great guest that joins us every week to talk through some of their insights into where things are going with AI and automation. So until next week, have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Transform Now, the podcast from SS&C Blue Prism. You can find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast channel, as well as YouTube. To stay on top of the hottest topics in the world of agentic automation, subscribe now. The future of work is here.